Near camera. Here. Present.
Present, and just for info, we could barely hear you guys.
Before we begin our budget workshop, I have a distinct and proud honor of swearing our new chief of police. Actually, we all know him and we all love him, Chris. Up until today, I didn't know your name was Christopher. I always called you Chris for all these years. But so we'll do that first, and then we'll begin our workshop. So at this time, come forward, please. YouTube? Go through this? Okay. Well, before we begin, Chris, do you have anybody here? I mean, I know you know everybody. But anybody you would like to recognize?
Yes, definitely. I have my mother, Carrie. My father, Dan. My son, Daniel. My daughter, Samantha. Her girlfriend, Jessica. And my wife, Deanna. Of course, the other crew in the back.
Yeah, of course. Just before we begin, Chris and I, as with the other you guys, we worked together for a long time. I remember back in the 95, 96, when I was a volunteer, and we used to work at the old station, which you guys wouldn't recognize, it was so small, but it was great. And in all of these years, one thing that was always consistent with Chris was his care for the community. He never really looked at it's just a job. It's always what he wanted to do with his passion. And we as a city would like to thank him all these years of service, and also to take on this great challenge and for him himself and a good service to the community. So, Chief, I would like to personally thank you, and I'm sure every resident out there appreciates all that you've done and what you're about to do, okay? Thank you very much. So I'm sure you've done this before. Yeah. So just go ahead and repeat after me. Please raise your right hand. I, Christopher Soria, do solemnly swear and affirm that I support and defend the Constitution of the United States,
I will defend the Constitution of the United States,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
Constitution of the State of California,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I bear true faith and allegiance
that bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely,
that I take this obligation freely,
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will
and that I will well
and faithfully discharge
and faithfully discharge
the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
the duties I'm about to assume.
Right. So, who do you want to pin the bench? Oh.
I can't.
Don't tell them now. Do you have to say anything? No? We will take a 5-minute break, so if anybody wishes to, would you like to say anything? Yeah, go ahead.
But I definitely would like to thank my parents for everything they've done for me. I'm honoring my dad. For the reason I am the way I am. Not a good thing. You know, they raised me right, and they just gave me those values that I brought on to the police department in 1983 when I started. And I thank them. I love them to death. And I'm glad they're always there for me. My son and my daughter, you know, even Jessica, they got to put up with me, and, you know, and the things and how I've been over the years. But I wouldn't so authentic the things that my parents still love me. And they're all doing great, and that's what I want. That's all I want. I think that's any parent would want. And not without me, my wife. I don't know if she put up with me for the last several years, but don't put up with me at work. But she's my right hand. As always was. The only reason why I took it today is because of you. You know, each and every one of you do an outstanding job. And that was probably the deciding factor of why I did what I did and said yes. I think a lot of you knew that for a long time. I did not want to do this. But when I made that decision, it was the big reason was because of a lot of you, or all of you, because you are the foundation of this police department. I may be the head leader, or however you want to call it, the chief, or anything, but you guys are the ones that are out there doing the work and doing the job. So I want to thank each and every one of you and my family as well. Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Hold on. Good. Silent there.
Okay.
Yeah. It's official. Okay. Yes or no, we are taking a 5-minute break, so if anybody wants photos, and, okay?
There are 12 participants in the conference. Please announce yourself.
City Hall.
Councilmember Juan Aguilar Jr.
Mayor Samra. As everybody knows, we had a slight change to the agenda. We will not go back to our regular workshop. At this time, citizen comments open. Does anybody wish to make a citizen comment at this time? Seeing nobody come forward. Mayor Pro Tem, are you still online?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Okay, and then we will now continue with our budget workshop. And Mr. Ramirez?
Yes, Honorable Mayor and Council and esteemed public and those who are joining us on the phone, thank you very much for participating in this workshop. The purpose for this workshop is to propose our fiscal year 2020-21 budget. What we're presenting today is a budget that has been lean for the last couple of years, and what we intend to do is to present a balanced budget. We've done as best we can, but we need some council direction. We've been able to curtail the gap to the point where we only have a $300,000 deficit right now. Unless we come forward with a balanced budget, we would then have to dip into our reserves by $300,000. So what we plan to do today is to basically showcase our entire budget. Feel free to ask any questions. And we definitely want to break it up by the different departments, and so to make it easier for anyone to understand and then also to ask questions. So with that, we're going to begin our workshop. Vanessa Portillo, our Finance Director.
Yes. Good evening, Mayor, council members, members of the public, city staff. I'm Vanessa Portillo, your Finance Director, and I am here to bring to you our budget workshop number 2 for our proposed budget fiscal year 2020-2021. Okay, thank you. Just to give you an overview of what we will be going over tonight, we will go over the budget book content, the book that you have in front of you and you have gotten a chance to review. We will go over some budget terminology, just different terms that we use throughout the book. We will go through the budget process. We will go through some highlights of the general fund and the departments that are supported by the general fund. And we will also go through some next steps on our budget. I just wanted to point out that our budget book is available online. It is located You can find it on our website at this livingstoncity.com, and you can follow it here under the 2020-2021 proposed budget. The budget book that you have received, you will find it. It is composed of an introduction piece. The introduction, it contains a transmittal letter, which is detailing you the state of the budget, what we find, some challenges and opportunities that we have found within building this budget to present to you, and it is part of the introduction. You will also have the executive summary. The executive summary, the intent of that piece of the budget is to give you a highlight and an overview level of what is going on with our budget. It talks about the general fund. It talks about our enterprise fund, the water, the sewer, and our sanitation department. And it will also give you some sort of, it will give you a little bit of pointers on some of the challenges, some of the opportunities that we will have as far as working with our budget for the year ahead. It has a budget summary section, which are basically worksheets that will detail budget fund by fund, each one of the revenue sources, where we're spending that money, and where each fund has either reserves or is using their reserves, and what is the balance of those reserves. In the operations section, you will find very detailed information on each one of our city departments. We have an administrative department. We have a section for public safety. We have a section for public works and recreation and community development. So you will have the detail of each one of those sections. You also find organizational charts for each one of those budget units or departments. And you can see what their mission, what the description of the department, and what their each one of the funds that they operate within this budget unit. You can see it in detail. We have a section for projects, vehicles, equipment, and improvements, just trying to get a feel and have an overview of what the city is trying to accomplish as far as improvements and big projects. And this is normally a section that it looks beyond the 1 year mark. It's intended to kind of like drive you through a long-term, this is what the city is planning on spending their time and effort to on different improvements. And then our miscellaneous section, it's the last section, and it's just a demographic makeup and a list of our population, the number of parks that we have, the road miles, and just to give the public and anybody that listens to our book a feel of what the size of our city and what the components of our city make up this book. In the budget terminology, I want to highlight that we are a full-service city, meaning that most city services are provided in-house. Say fire, police. We have a police department. We're not a contract city where other cities contract out these services. We have two types of revenue. We have discretionary revenue, which is available for use at the discretion of the city council. This is mostly coming from our taxes, sales tax and property tax, and any other kind of fee, such as a business license fee. This could be used at the discretion of the council to support the operations, the administrative operations of the city. And then we have non-discretionary revenue, which means that it's money that is given to the city for a specific purpose. So in the purpose of the grant, for example, we just received a grant for COVID-19 relief. It has specific guidelines on how to use the money. It cannot, and the city has to be very careful to abide by the guidelines of those grants and use it for the very specific purpose. On the expenditure side, you will see it throughout the book that we will highlight personnel costs, which is wages and benefits for our full-time and part-time personnel. You will see a section for maintenance and operations expenses, and this is everything that is not related to wages or benefits, say utilities, phone, postage, maintenance, contract services as well. And then we also have a section for vehicle equipment and improvements, which just highlights any kind of big ticket items, maybe mostly one-time items that we might be using some of our resources in each one of those budget units. Fund balance is basically the savings, the reserves for each one of the funds. And we could either have an assigned fund balance, which is fund balance that it is specific to a certain expense. Some examples of those assigned fund balances is if the council determines to have a fund balance specific to reduce the pension liability in the near future, we can have something set up like that. And anything that it's not assigned falls within the unassigned fund balance, which is available for the council's discretion to be used with any type of project or expenditure. Just a quick overview of the budget process. The budget process normally it is a 6-month project. It starts in early January with expenditure projections. Normally we take on an overview or a review of the first 6 months of the year, say July through December, and we can get a really good snapshot on what the expenditure trend is looking like for the city, and with that projection, we either take out any one-time expenses, or we apply any kind of economic inflators, say any cost of living adjustments that are known, that are negotiated, and we know that they're going to come into effect the following fiscal year. Those items are applied, and we are able to have an expenditure projection where we feel comfortable with carrying that through for the new fiscal year. Revenue projections come a little later. They come sometime around March. So we normally have our expenditures in place. We wait for revenue projections to come in order to do any kind of adjustments that we need to do to put the budget book together and have it ready to present it to our city manager. We normally conduct a draft of this projections in early April, and we bring the budget book to be reviewed and put it forward to council's consideration for approval sometime in early June, since our fiscal year has a July 1st start.
Let me just chime in real quick, Vanessa. Just to elaborate a little bit further in terms of where we get our revenue projections for the public and everybody else to understand. So we actually contract with a firm that specifically dedicates itself to those numbers. And the name of the firm is called HDL. And so they basically periodically provide us with a detailed forecasting in every category. And based on that, that's the best guesstimation, and that's what we use to, put together our proposed budget based on a number of other factors that we know also local. Thank you.
Thank you. So, as I'm pointing out here in this chart, by April, we normally have a good projection between revenues and expenditures to present to our city manager and to finalize the budget book with any other department's expenditure requests. That was not the case for this year. We had shelter in place come into place in mid-March, and that completely changed the way that we had done our projections. It changed what we had put together for city manager to review. And if we can go to the next slide. I put together this slide just so the public and our council will have an idea of what we were dealing with March, April time. This is our budget for fiscal, the council approved for fiscal year 1920. We had revenues at $6.1 million. We had expenses at $6.5 million. This was due because we had one-time costs in this expenditure side that exceeded the revenue in 1920. However, by the time April came around, and I've called it the pre-pandemic 2020-2021 budget, we were projecting higher revenues. We had removed any one-time expenditures that took place in 1920, so our expenditures adjusted and went down a little bit. And we were projecting that we were going to have a surplus of about $200,000. You can see this from the $2.7 million in our reserves. We were going to put $200,000 in our savings, and we had a really good story to come and show our council. The proposed budget that we have today is a proposed budget that once the shelter in place came into play and our HDL, our consulting firm, adjusted all of their projections for sales tax and all of the taxes around and any other revenue source that it was sensitive to the economic and the purchasing power of and also put it into play the shelter in place impact. We had to do a reduction in our revenues. So from 6.4, you see revenues now being presented to you at 5.7 million, a $700,000 reduction. Majority of this reduction is coming from our sales taxes. And at that point, our city manager recommended that we would look into any kind of non-critical expenditure. One of those items that we were able to go through and quickly adjust was most of the training, travel, any non-critical, non-urgent items, and we were able to have some reductions in our expenditure side. However, we're still short. So you see that we are presenting a budget, or our revenues are at 5.7. We have $6 million in expenditures today. And at this point, this shortage in our revenue, it is making us tap into our reserves. So we are tapping about $300,000 into our reserves. Just as I shared the pre-pandemic and the post-pandemic chart, I wanted to also mention that we are taking on, also on June 16, the council approved the extension of the budget. So we're conducting and we're holding this budget workshop today in August. Normally this would have happened in June, but I'm very appreciative that the council was given us that extension, and also this budget that we're presenting, it is still a work in progress. As you can see, we do have a budget that is not balanced, and we are going to we're calling it our starting point, and we're calling it a work in progress, and we will need our council's direction in order to mitigate some of the impacts of this pandemic. I will go through some of the highlights for our budget. We have a budget with just all funds. We have revenues of about $40 million. Majority of this revenues come from intergovernmental funds. We have charges for services. This is most of our charges for services dollars come from our water, sewer, sanitation. We have taxes of $5.1 million. And then we have a smaller piece of our budget that it is from fines and procedures, transfers in, our money coming in and out from different funds. We have $600,000 in other use of money and property at $200,000, and licenses and permits of $500,000. Expenditures for all funds.
Before you continue,
Yes.
can you, for people that don't know, can you explain to them what intergovernmental is? I think a lot of people will be confused about that. Please just take about 30 seconds.
No worries. Intergovernmental funds are monies that are coming from other government units. For example, we have money that comes from the San Joaquin for Measure D that is collected by the county. The county passes through those funds into the city, and it's coming from another government agency. So we place those funds into the intergovernmental money. In the expenditure side, majority of the funds that are allocated are going into projects. They make up $34.7 million. We have maintenance and operations at $9 million, personnel costs at $7.9 million, and vehicles improvements $2.2 million, transfers out at $1.5 million. And the same way as I shared, transfers in is money coming in between each one of the funds within our budget units. Transfers out, it's money going out of our budget units into other funds. Expenditures are coming in at $55.3 million, and this is expenditures for all funds of the city. Some of the major projects, I have listed some here. They're either new or continuing projects. We have the CDBG sewer line replacement, well 8 and 9 repairs and replacements. We have the Winton Parkway widening project. We also have a Hammett and Campbell improvement. We have a police station roof repair and some server replacements in City Hall. We will go into highlights for the general fund. So in the general fund, we have revenues coming in at $5.7 million. As I had mentioned earlier, majority of these revenues are coming in from taxes. $3.3 million are made up of sales tax and property taxes that are coming into the city. As you can see, I have noted here, it makes up about 58% of the city's revenue sources. So we're highly dependent on in any fluctuation in sales taxes or property taxes definitely make a big impact in our city. We have charges for services at $181,000, intergovernmental funds, funding that comes from other governmental units at $1.6 million. We have fines and procedures, $35,000. Transfers in $20,000, which is a transfer coming in from a grant that is coming for the fire department to purchase some equipment. We have licenses and permits at $125,000. Use of money and property, $28,000, and other at $352,000.
I just wanted to take it real quick on the licenses and permits. This is where all employees, all residents, council, everybody can do their part, because we have. So if you see, for the most part, there is some exceptions, but for the most part, everybody that comes into Livingston that's conducting business in Livingston has to get a business license. And so, it adds up, whether it's, whatever the amount is, it all adds up. And so you have, so if you're out there, you can always call City Hall and say, hey, there's X truck parked in front of, this facility. Do they have a business license? You can call it in. Because you would be surprised. Every week, we probably catch anywhere between, 5 or more that are conducting business, and every year they have to renew it. So even though they were here last year, that's great, but if they're conducting in this particular year, then they have to renew it. So keep your eyes open. All that money is what we, of course, use to conduct city operations and et cetera.
We have a revenue trend graph showing you where the city gets their money. We have actual for 3 years, 2017-18, 18-19, our projection from last fiscal year, and our projection today. And as you can see, our sales tax revenue, it makes up the majority, over half of the way that the city collects their funds. So we are quite receptive of any kind of impact, or any time our flags go way high when we hear that there is any event that may impact our sales tax or property tax collection. We are highly dependent on those revenues. Our expenditures in the general fund, they are at $6 million. Majority of 70% of our expenditures in the general fund are going to pay for salaries and benefits for city personnel. We have $1.3 million going into maintenance and operations, and vehicles and equipment are making up about $45,000. And then we have transfers out, which I had shared that transfers out are dollars that are coming out of the general fund in support to other budget units. In this case, $489,000 are going out to support gas tax. It's also our recreation department and our community development department. And I will go through each one of those departments that receive general fund support shortly. I have a couple of other graphs on those as well. Also on the expenditure side, we see that about 70% of our funds in the general fund goes to pay for salaries and benefits. This is the makeup of each one of the benefiting departments. We have administrative services at $656,000, public works $336,000, parks maintenance at $358,000, fire department at $135,000. We have the transfers out for $489,000, our elected officials department at $62,000, and our police receiving $3.9 million. This is
So just if we can go back to so when we talk about fire, of course, there's additional funding that we can elaborate a little bit further. Did you want me to touch that, or do you want to touch it?
I had a slide at the end, but okay.
So we'll do that. We'll come back, and there's a reasoning for that because with fire, we have a fire fund, and the county actually collects all that funding, and it goes directly to the county, and that's why it's not represented there. But there's a larger cost, and we'll come back to that. We do have a slide, so we'll do that.
Okay. This chart here, the general fund revenue versus expense and our fund balance. Our fund balance is this line here, and it's a graph showing you between, our 17 and 18 actuals, the 18, 19 experience, where our fund balance is trending, and it's slightly trending downward. I will go into our gas tax fund. It's one of the funds that receives general fund subsidies. And here you will see the gas tax, the general fund transfer that it is receiving. It's about $73,000 for fiscal year 2020-2021, which is comparable to the transfer from the general fund that it received in the previous year. The gas tax expenditures are about $500,000, or a little bit over $500,000, and they need this $73,000 from the general fund in order to meet their expenditures for the next fiscal year. We have our community development department, and you can see here for the past couple of years, the community development department is quite a self-sufficient budget unit, and however, they have required some general fund support in order to meet their expenditures. So in 17-18 and 18-19, that was at 46,000 and 32,000. With this fiscal year, for the proposed budget 2020-2021, their requirement or the general fund support is at 68,000, and in order for them to close their gap here between this $700,000 in revenue and $900,000 in expenditures, they're using some of their fund balance, their reserve.
Vanessa, can you explain what the gas tax fund is and community development fund is, just for the public? Just a quick little,
Absolutely.
you know, what it is.
Yes. Our gas tax is it's a tax that is collected or that is charged at the pump whenever, you know, vehicles go and purchase gas. It's collected by the state. It goes through the county, and the county funnels that money to the city. We get a portion of that tax or that sales tax or the tax collection for the gas tax, and it is a non-discretionary revenue because it is specific for it's specific to pay for maintenance and improvements of the city's roads and streets.
Yeah, and by the way, it fluctuates depending on what the price of fuel is. So we're heavily dependent on that. We would like to be more diversified, but when you have those swings, they go up and down. That gets a little scary because if you're projecting X amount of revenue coming in, and then there's something unexpected, and then suddenly the price plummets, then what you expected in terms of revenue is not coming in, and that swing can be big and put us in an awkward position. So again, when the price is high, you know, everybody's happy. But when the price of fuel is low, then it gets a little tricky.
Absolutely. This was one of the funds or the budget units that we had to reduce. If we look into just the historical revenue collections, we were projecting to collect about $578,000. Part of that was a grant for natural gas reserve, but absent that grant, our revenue collections were somewhere around $430,000 for gas tax in fiscal year 1920. In 2021, we definitely had to keep this revenue at a more conservative rate, and since it's heavily dependent on fuel costs, on people visiting the pump, and we know that with this shelter in place, there was a big reduction on those trips to the gas station. In the Community Development Fund, this is our budget unit that deals with the city's growth, developing new residential, industrial, commercial units within the city. Most of this department, it's a self-supported department as far as they support themselves, or they support the staff and the maintenance that the department needs in order to conduct the tasks that they need to do in order to, by charging fees, such as building permits.
Yeah, so the units that make up this particular area would be like your planning, okay, your administrative analyst, you have the building inspector, you have your permit technician, and then also some of the engineering.
Yeah. our 3 units or departments within the Community Development Fund are planning, building, and engineering. Our next department receiving a general fund support is recreation. And you can see here our recreation department within this historical chart. It's been about a 50, 17, 18, it was about a 50-50, 50% general fund support, 50% revenue from the department. And then it shifted a little bit. This year, our recreation fund, the general fund is providing a support of $351,000 to conduct the activity for the department. And this is our all of our programs, our sports programs, recreation, facility rentals. That's what
Support staff.
this budget unit supports. Along with looking at a 1-year projection for the city, so we spend 6 months of the year looking at how we're going to do the next fiscal year, so the next 12 months. It is also part of our finance team to look at a long-term strategy, long-term range financials. So this is what this 5-year fiscal model encompasses. And what we have taken into account is how we're doing today and what our market trends are looking, or what they're telling us that they're going to look like in the future. And with those factors, we're able to carry out a 5-year projection. So what we're seeing here is that in year 1, our proposed budget 2020-2021, our revenues are short and our expenditures are exceeding our revenues. And what this analysis is giving us is a projection that if we continue to move and try to catch up between our revenue and our expenditures continue to pace at the same rate that they're pacing today, we're going to continue to tap into our reserves, and by within the 5-year mark, we're going to look into depleting our reserves to potentially leaving $300,000. We have put together this a few ideas or a few items that we feel we can bring forward to our council to balance our general fund. Some of those options that we have here for you is, 1, we have some vacant positions today that we can, we propose that we freeze them, meaning we don't fill those positions. We're looking at savings of approximately $583,000 if we were to do something like that. I broke those down into each one of the departments that those positions reside. $318,000 comes from police. We have $19,000 in recreation and about $145,000 in our public works department. We are also, another option that we have in order to balance our general fund gap is the implementation of furloughs. We are looking, depending on how many days we choose to to implement a furlough, we're looking at savings between $1.5 million and $395,000. And this is something that I've taken for all funds. But since we are looking at balancing the general fund, I have listed here what the general fund would look like, or the savings for the general fund. So at a 1 day per week, that is about a 20% salary reduction. That's quite aggressive, but I've listed it there as an option. Is you're looking at about $1.5 million. The general fund will see savings of $833,000. 1 day every other week equates up at about 10% salary reduction. You're looking at $790,000 savings. General fund will see about $417,000. And 1 day per month, which is something that it has been implemented in the past, it equates to about 5% salary reduction. Total savings would be about $395,000, and the general fund would see a savings of about $208,000.
So to elaborate a little further to the slide, so we'll just pick one. So we'll just say right now, as you all know, we're currently, our gap is $300,000. So if you look at 1 day every other week, that's a 10% reduction. For the general fund, that's $417,000. That means that we would have a little cushion of about $117,000 with a little bit of a cushion. If we do 1 day per month, it would be $208,000, which means that we still have to come up with the difference of 300 and 208. Okay. However, we can do a combination of different things. It doesn't have to be, just furloughs. And by the way, we would have to talk to the bargaining groups about, the furloughs or any other types of reductions.
Absolutely. Another way that we could reduce the gap of the general fund deficit would be looking into user fees. In this case, we have had somewhat of a discussion in prior council meetings to look into the recreation fees and coming and updating those fee schedules. The recreation department is a department that stands separate from the general fund, but it does receive a general fund support. So that would mean that if they are able to collect more revenue, they will need less support from the general fund, and it will help us close the gap between the revenue and expenditure that we are seeing on our side for the general fund. And then we have organizational restructures. We have done this in the past, looking into any kind of redundancies, looking for doing our job with more efficiently, and that would be something that we would have to bring back also to council for you to review and approve any kind of restructure that we recommend. That is the piece that I have for the general fund. I can go into the enterprise fund if you like, or we can do any questions if you may have any questions for the general fund.
Okay, I think what we should do, because enterprise funds are pretty restricted.
That's correct.
Our biggest challenge isn't, I believe, in our enterprise funds, it is our general fund categories. So I think before we move on to the enterprise fund, we should ask questions at this time before we go on to. Enterprise funds are easy. You want to lay off people or you want to raise rates. There's no other way around it. But here, there's a lot of flexibility. So before we move on, does the public have any questions? Does anybody have some audience? Can you just so people can hear you, do you have a phone? Oh, if you want, you can come up.
Sorry, I had a question. Organization restructuring basically means layoff. And so if we froze the vacant positions now because the city is running, and the city is running efficiently, our police department, they're amazing. I think we're one of the safest cities that we live in. Our recreation department, we do a lot with what we have, like the Marines. We do the most with police. And our public works department, they do the same thing. They make it work. So if we froze where we're at now, to help balance the budget, to cut any kind of layoff, and I think if we went to the bargaining agent and we tried to do some kind of furloughs that would work for each department, it might be different, but it's better than losing their job or being laid off. And so if we froze, thought about at least some kind of furlough, and the user fees. I work in recreation. I have put all my kids to recreation. All of you, if minus one of the council members, have been in our recreation department. Again, whatever we do with the thought of people that live here. So if we were to raise the prices in recreation, it wouldn't be some astronomical fee. It would still be affordable. Of course, we still work with people if you can't afford it. We have never turned anybody away in recreation, so even if the fees went up, we would still be able to accommodate the people that still needed us. So I think if you think about those things when you go to vote on that, it would be a win-win for all of us, for the city, for the public, for the community, and our staff, which I'm part of. Even though I am a resident, I'm also staff. So that was all the questions I had. Just something maybe for you all to think about from staffing.
I wanted to take a quick moment to add a little bit to the furlough scenario. When we mentioned furloughs, it's really everybody other than the police department, because with the police department they really can't do furloughs. So with them it would have to be some type of a cut or reduction in pay. And actually we did that back in 2013, I believe. So when you see furloughs, it would be furloughs and I guess the best word would be a reduction in salary to address that 1 day a week or 1 day every other week.
Is it still open to the public?
Yes, it is open to the public. I do have a person coming up, and once the person is done, I will ask for anybody else who wishes to speak.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr.
Hi, good evening, Council and public. My name is Jose Moran, Livingston, California. I am one of the co-advisors to LPAC, which is the Livingston Teen Advisory Council to the Rec Commission. And although this has been the first year that our kids have been, that LPAC has been in place, most of our kids have already presented plans to the director of Rec to be able to assist and help fundraise money to assist the Rec department. Because that goes to show that to these kids, which some already graduated from high school, that shows how important the Rec department is. Not so much for them, because most of them don't use the programs or participate in the Rec department anymore because they're older. But as a show of gratitude and to demonstrate how important it is, these programs for the rest of the kids in the community. I think personally, not as a co-advisor to LTAC, I have already shared many times how important Rec Commission is. Okay, and also in comparison to other programs in other cities, I think I could probably say that sometimes we have twice as many programs than most other and bigger cities. So, and then as much as we invest for budget for rec, to me, I see it as an investment for the future. Because we're working on those kids, offering solutions and programs to prevent those kids from being on the street doing that. So when we consider budgets and who we're going to cut or how we're going to move money around, please keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The other person that wanted to speak, were you on the phone?
Yes, I am.
Please identify yourself.
Walpinder King, 657 Clara Court. Hey, again, I want to thank the female that spoke before Mr. Moran, stating that the police department is doing a great job. I actually work for the police department, so I want to thank her personally. Again, I'm glad that Jose mentioned that the police department would be the only department that would be taking pay cuts. I mean, that's the right way to say it. It's a pay cut than a salary reduction, because that's I know that's happened in the past. I just don't feel it's fair that you can tell certain employees that they can have the day off and the other employees still require them to work the same amount, but reduce or take money away from them. We are short, according to the proposal that was passed in 2005 regarding 1.5 officers for every 1,000. If we actually, when Vanessa was talking, she actually mentioned that the police department would be taking the biggest cut at 300,000 plus. So you guys have to look at this. I understand rec is important, but rec should be a self-funded business that should be able to take care of itself and rejuvenate money for itself. If we can't pay for something, just like in our personal lives, we shouldn't be able to have it. I understand it might sound kind of harsh, but if we can't keep up our rec program, then I understand, but we have to start looking at different directions and start thinking of different innovative ways to generate some of that money. When it comes to the police department, you also understand that these officers are working an extreme amount of overtime just to make sure that we can cover the streets and make sure that we can provide a safe environment for our citizens. So again, I'd like to thank whoever said that the police department is doing a great job, because they actually are doing a great job, but we also have to remember that we're taking them and we're keeping them away from their own families so they can protect us and our families at home. So please, when you guys look at budget cuts or you look at taking money away, please keep that in your mind that they're staying away from their families to make sure that you are safe at home with your families. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments from anybody from phoning in? Is there anybody that's not here wish to comment at this time? If not, I will temporarily hold off anybody calling in. Anybody in the audience wish to make a comment?
Julio Millan, Livingston, California. I'm also one of the rec commissioners here. So I have one or two questions. So I understood correctly. So the projections before the pandemic, we had a surplus, right? We had about a $300,000 surplus before the pandemic hit. So we were doing really well. Obviously, the pandemic hit and kind of changed everything around. I believe that's why the surplus, the emergency fund is there for, right? So one of the things we have to be adequate is simply, and I know it's going to happen in every department, but mostly recreation is, once hopefully next year the pandemic does end, there's going to be a lot more kids that are going to want to get into sports and get out there, especially I have a feeling it's going to be around baseball time. And baseball is very expensive to run. So to me, the pandemic is an emergency. That's why we have that buffer. So instead of making cuts, yeah, we dip into the reserve, because it looks like so far we were actually looking well to be in surplus. That's what the reserve is for. So instead of making cuts, yeah, dip into this year, see what we're doing, and see for next year, once the pandemic is hopefully over, seeing where we're at. Because I believe, I know we don't like to dip into the emergency, but this is an emergency. That's what that money is for. that's pretty much it.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else from the audience who wish to speak?
Good evening, council. For the presentation, I'll start.
You ready, huh?
I don't know if you can hear me clearly. Gabriel Salazar, Council Enforcement Support. So I took a kind of a quick review of the department's budget. This is kind of what I saw in comparison to 2019, 2020 to 2020, 2021. Police department increase in public safety for 500,000. Fire department, a decrease of 2,000. Public works, a decrease of 60,000. Parks and recreation, a decrease of 47,000. Administration, an increase of 18,000. City council, a decrease of 10,000. I'm no expert. That's just kind of what I found. Just kind of looking at from year to year by departments. I'm also interested kind of to see if in those frozen positions that I anticipated, what's the number of personnel or staff members that are tied to those? So is that like one police officer, 5 police officers? Is that 2 part-time parks and rec person? Is it 1? Anyways, kind of thing. Additional information, I think that would be helpful as well. Also, another thing that I thought about maybe is that I know during the recession, a lot of cities, just like we have the proposals for furloughs, maybe an alternative or option, I don't even know if it's feasible, but maybe instead of, furloughing people, no furloughs, but what if, the city schedule is going to be modified? 7:30 to 5:30 p.m. Monday to Thursday, maybe 8 a.m. to 6 a.m. Monday to Thursday. That way you're not reducing the number of personnel, jobs. You're decreasing maybe use city facilities a little bit less, 1 day less a week. It's just kind of temporary experience, once we get out of this kind of like a deficit or in better shape. I mean, just a proposal, just an option. This has been thought about it as well. I know we're talking about increasing recreation. I mean, it's all tied together. You need to look at it holistically. I agree that if there's not enough police officers and they impact services, things like that. And when I see we got the 1580 at the same time, if you also reduce park and recreation programs or you charge more, sometimes you also disable some people to participate because the costs are too high. Additionally, when you have kids, let's say participating, you're having the kids maybe that are on the street and they want to join other groups that are not good or helping for them. So kind of think about that. Also look at the impact of reducing parks and recreation. At the same time, let's also look at other departments, not just parks and recreation. Maybe that is one alternative or an option is maybe $5 increase. How are our planning fees, our development fees, how are our police fees, our income fees, things of that sort. So kind of looking at all things holistically, what department is doing, department to improve their operations, be more efficient, reduce personnel. Okay? Let me see. Also, looking at the executive summary on page 9, I was curious to see if we can maybe also have that. I don't even know if it's feasible or practical. So look at that by department. Because the way it's written, you have your revenue pie chart, you have a expenditure pie chart, and you have like operations, maintenance, police services, etc. Maybe, I don't know, another way to look at it also in addition would be maybe by department. Where's the bunch of our services going? Parks and recreation, is it police, those kinds of things. And you've been looking at the revenue streams for each, and then also the, at the expenditures department. I know we have that line item by item per department, but maybe in the form of the first pie chart, kind of like on page 9, like I thought, maybe that would be helpful as well. Okay? Just some ideas that I thought about basically on looking at this. So, great job, council, great job, science circus. You're doing great. Thank you.
And Mr. Salazar, just to elaborate a little bit on one of the comments you made specifically about the modification of city services. What we're trying to do is address the gap, and by shifting hours and times, without actually implementing the furloughs, we can't have that savings. So it has to be either a furlough, it has to be a reduction in salary, or some type of cut in order for us to address the gap.
So being like that, having a 410 schedule, that wouldn't adjust this issue. Right? Okay.
Because we would still be paying them their full salary.
Thank you.
Anybody else from the public? Anybody at home? Seeing nobody coming forward, I will also give more opportunities at each particular fund coming up. This is for the general fund right now. To Vanessa, aside from cuts, and we understand user fees restoration, what other options does the city have to increase its revenue?
To increase the revenue?
Yes, we know one way to balance the budget is to do some cuts, or furloughs, or whatever you want to call it, fees and positions. I know that user fees and recreation can be increased, but is there anything else the city can take action on to increase other sources of revenue to offset for the general fund?
So right now, Mayor, the one source of revenue that the city is heavily dependent on, it's the one that it's not coming in as planned.
No,
So
I get that, I know that. But is there anything else the council can take action on to increase any kind of revenue fund?
Well, the only thing that we can think of that, and it's going to take a little bit of time, would be trying to implement, some type of sales tax, or increasing planning fees, looking at charging more in that department for services. Other than that, having more individuals purchase more fuel, which is one of our biggest revenue sources. We know that on the property tax, for the most part, is going to stay the same, at least for this year, until there's a percentage increase next year. So in addition to that, there's really, unless you institute some type of utility user tax, and of course that takes a little bit of time, but that can be done. That's on cell phones and utilities. Other than instituting something like that, there's really no other way to increase revenue.
Okay, I kind of knew the answer, but I wanted the public, everybody to know what options we do have or how limited we are in the options. So at this time, Council, Mr. Aguilar, or anybody else speaking over, does anybody wish to ask questions at this time? And before you begin, everybody else, please mute your phone. No, we'll get another feedback here.
Yes, I got a question about the police department.
Mr. Kang, can you hold it closer?
I have had a talk with the chief today. We were on the staff with the evaluation city council approved with more budget. It's unsafe. We got officers working 19 hours a day. You guys trust that the guy that has that for 19 hours? And then you guys trying to say, right? But it just comes to line, it's unsafe. It's not like the water department, one guy calls a stick, the other four is going to pick it up. One guy calls a stick, they're going to have to call another guy all the time. So I don't think we need to set it up. Like, I don't mind going into our savings account, general fund, reserve, whatever you want to call it. For other cases, I don't want to do the most important thing right now. What the new general plan, what kind of increase, the almost size. I'm bringing 450 units, another 2,000 residents in town. If you can't provide safety, why do you go? I live in the town. So I think that's great. I don't agree on three. I think we need more officers. We live in this town. Like I said, we have one officer, or two officers on one shift.
The one thing that's going to be built, almost 20,000 residents for one office. I don't know who lives down that office in that station. Well, good for you. I know. I'm not even going to do it. We can't figure out a way to find the cost.
Anything else, Mr. Payne?
No, there's also one more thing that I was city manager that you refer, again, it's not fair to the police department to work the same on days and take a pay cut on everything else that they are. If we choose that route, I'll consider the way work, everybody gets a pay cut. You can't pick and choose. The guys that are getting work for the most hours, give them that pay. You guys are on the out, they also deserve the out. Thank you, guys.
Mr. Hancock?
Just to follow real quick, when you take a furlough day, that day you're still getting your salary, or is it you're not getting paid for that day? Yeah. All right, so obviously we're trying to balance the budget, and these are the options we have, correct? I mean, this is what staff is bringing to the table.
This is some of the recommendations.
Yes.
Just to follow up on the comments regarding recreation, I don't think they're saying we need to eliminate recreation or or cut programs. I think obviously we need to have a discussion of what we need to do to close that gap. Obviously, I've said before that I was kind of against user fee increases. But considering the current situation, I mean, that's something that we really need to look into with the condition that we wouldn't, deny any opportunity for a child that can't afford it, So, I mean, if that's an option and that would help the recreation department in regards to funding and keeping programs alive, I mean, I'll be for that, for user fee increases. I know that the general fund obviously helps the recreation department, so maybe there could be some help there in regards to user fees. But just like Gabriel was saying, I think we need to look at it at a holistic point of view. I mean, there's other ways of increasing fees, I guess. For example, I know I'm a big advocate for public safety, so I understand where you're coming from. And obviously, I've been advocating for a second firefighter for the past 4 years. I know that we had discussions about for example, the fire protection impact fees, increasing those. I mean, is this a good opportunity to increase those with new development coming in? Because that could be an option too. I'm not sure exactly how it's calculated right now, but I think we should definitely look into that, considering there's 2 major apartment complexes coming in. We're going to bring more people. We're going to need more police officers. We're going to need, obviously, more fire personnel. We need a new truck engine or ladder truck to be able to mitigate any risk of fire or rescue. And I think that's been communicated from the fire department. So that's something that probably we need to increase. What I would like to see to have further discussion to consider Mr. Kang's concerns about police department. Is there a way we could dig into exactly how many positions there is, how many positions are needed, how short are we, where the funding source is coming from? For example, the resource officers, the mental health grant we have. Is there any way to play around with those positions, or hire reserve officers? Is there something that could be done? Like Julio said, I mean, you're right. This is an emergency situation where, that's why the reserves are there. At the same time, we don't know. I sort of get it. I mean, we need to use it. Let's use it. But at the same time, we don't know how big of an impact this is going to have on the long term. If we go digging into those reserves right now, and we're in a worse situation next year, we're going to be in a deficit. And obviously, we don't want to do that because then we're going to have to cut people's jobs, and that's the last thing I want to do. So we could leave some kind of cushion there just in case things get bad next year. But yeah, we need to dig. I mean, we're already going to be digging into some if we don't balance it. So maybe we could dig into, or we could discuss the positions in the police department, and then maybe we could talk about how we could increase some of this impact fees for new development coming into town to help out as well. And as much as it hurts me, look into some recreation fee increases with the notion that we're not going to turn any child away if they cannot afford it. I know it's a lot, and but I mean, we have to have these discussions because it's important. I know everybody in the council has different priorities. Like recreation has always been a part of my priorities in regards to working with the rec commission. Public safety definitely is very important. I understand there's an uptake in shootings, which could be credited to the pandemic, but also we need bodies out there, definitely. So we need to have that discussion now before the budget is passed. I know it's a lot, but
No, that's okay. We do have
I can address several of those.
Especially with the governor releasing another 8,000 inmates. We can't, if we don't have enough cops, we got all these criminals running around. We gotta live here. Comes back to that. I have to smile and say, something we have to consider.
Yes. So if I might chime in just a teensy bit here, this is Jose, the city manager, for those of you that are on the phone. So let me just kind of lay out so everybody understands kind of where we really are at this moment in time. So right now, at this moment in time, we are $300,000 in the red. Okay. So
into the reserve.
Okay. Well, yeah. Huh?
We're $300,000 short into reserve.
Yes. So we're proposing a balanced budget, which we want to do every year because we never want to take from the reserve. We always want to put money into the reserves, and of course the reserves are for emergency purposes. And of course, at that moment, the council decides whether or not you want to dip into the reserves or not. But as staff and good fiscal responsibility, we never want to dip into the reserves. We always like to build into our reserves. So right now, we have a $300,000 negative fund balance. So if we take that $300,000 and we look at adding more positions, then that number will only grow. So if you would like to add 2 additional officers, so that basically means that you're adding close to another $250,000. Okay, so then it's not $300,000; it would be $550,000 deficit, or dip into the reserves. And then the trajectory moving forward for the next 5 years, unless your revenues exceed your expenditures, you're going to continue to dip into the reserves because you're not putting any money back to fill that reserve. And right now, for the last 2 fiscal years, we basically have presented a bare bones budget. Let me give you an example. This year, so the 3 departments that had used general fund money is the recreation department, the community development department, and the police department, and the building department. So in this proposed budget, we're reducing the permit staff from 5 days a week to 3 days a week. So if we are looking at cutting more in that department to pull out some more general fund money, it's going to be a little bit, but then you're going to impact the the ability for the building department to be able to work with these developments that would be coming in. In the planning department, you basically have about 70,000. That individual comes twice a week for a year. So if you cut that in half, you can get some savings of about $35,000. But then you only have a planner here 1 day a week, which will also impact, those businesses that are looking at building in our community. And then you jump over to the recreation. In recreation, you have 70 part-time employees. These are all supporting staff, referees, all these other stuff, coaches and stuff. And then you have 2 employees, which would be Jackie and Tony. So I believe, if I remember correctly, in my mind, so if we were to eliminate one of the positions, in this case, let's say Tony's position, you're looking at about $40,000 savings. If you eliminate everything else, all the other recreation support staff, that's 70 people. That's going to be close to about 60,000, if I remember correctly. So they're bare bones already, and all the other departments are pretty much there as well. So that's why we are proposing a holistic approach to this and using different methods to try to get to a balanced budget, and then looking forward in the trajectory of the next 5 years. So because we have to work with the bargaining groups, whether they be salary cuts or furloughs, this is something that all of us would be contributing towards to keep us going until things look at turning around. And then lastly, what the mayor mentioned with regards to what other revenue sources. Unless you institute some of these other ideas that I just threw out, it's really tough to bring in more revenue. Now, what Councilmember Aguilar mentioned about increasing some of these development impact fees and stuff, a lot of these projects, it's going to take about a year for these to hit. So that's not really going to help us this year, but can help us, in outly years, and I think we should look at all of that. And we are here to listen to other ideas. So hopefully I answered some of your guys' questions, and I'm open for any questions you might have.
Also,
go ahead.
I just wanted to clarify that any kind of development impact fees are fees that are to be, they're specific. They need to be used for the impact of new development in the city. So it is very difficult for us to justify using those monies for any kind of ongoing maintenance, other than just one-time big-ticket item projects, because we can support it, that it is due to new development in the city. Salaries with the ongoing cost, and we will get in trouble.
Yeah, where I was referring to is, and I think that's what you're alluding to, is like the CFDs. Under the CFDs, when new development comes in, of course, that development has to pay their own way. That's where money comes.
Okay. Mr. Aguilar, anything further?
There's been freezing.
I'm sorry.
Can you hear me?
Okay.
Can you talk about how many positions there is with the police department, and what does freezing those vacant positions mean versus furloughs and not freezing any positions? What does that mean?
We have, today, we have 3 positions that are vacant in the police department. That's where we are pulling that number for that salary number of $318,000 in savings. There is 1 part-time position that is vacant in the recreation department, and there is 3 positions that are vacant in our public works department.
Now, if those positions are not frozen, then that's money that would then,
Well, then why didn't you guys take it out of the book? If you knew you wanted us to freeze them, why didn't you guys have them taken out already? Just to make it look good on a piece of paper?
We can't make it just look good on the piece of paper. This is something that we need to be transparent with our council members. If we have, it's going through the position of proof process, the vote of the council members, and we can't just like freeze them or not, or unfund them. We would have to also make sure that we present those decisions to the council, that there is transparency those decisions.
So with the new general plan, we're trying to grow. Obviously, we can't provide a safe town. That's the first thing to stop freezing the town. Well, what are we going to do? We have another 2,000 residents. The guys are looking for the 80 units. 2 more 1,000 residents. They're going home. So we're going to have to officers that don't have any units to go to the 30,000 residents. Is that what we do? Is that what? And then we start officers for sure. Yes. So 750 this year or 6? Yeah, we'll go from 1 homicide already to 1 homicide already to 5.
Can't hear you.
You need to pick up the phone closer. Yes, one person did. That's a lot. We can't hear you. Can you hold it closer? Yeah, just in case one kid doesn't play soccer. No, I'm gonna mute him. Okay. Can you hear me? No, I'm talking. Yeah. Yeah. So we have. Hold on. Councilman Craig has the floor. Go ahead, sir. Everybody else, please. How the town is going, maybe I don't know, 20,000, whatever it is. What are we doing? How can we back and then go on to the next year?
Still can't hear.
You need to. I'm already know. Go like this. Can you hear me now? Yeah. Yes, like I said, the public safety is the most important thing right now. It's always been. With the town, like Mayor said, the girls, we can't have just 2 officers for each shift. And 25,000, I don't know what the percentage is going to come out. According to the resolution, we're already behind. When we grow the inflow, next year, and the problem is next year's budget is the same thing. This is the same budget that I had last year. You have to grow it every year. Not too much, right? You have to take care of it. Or you're going to grow down, keep it at all right. Thank you. Are you muted?
Can you hear me? Okay. So I see the point that Councilman King is trying to present, and he's trying to present it really hard. Public safety is very important to our town, but the survival of our town is more important overall. The direction that we're going, the trajectory that has been presented, is that each time, by 2025, we are going to deplete everything that we have. How are we going to survive? So again, you want to know how we're going to bring in some money. Okay, encourage everybody to go out there, do their census. That's money that's going to be going into your community service funds, paying for police. Again, Mr. Salazar pointed out that it's an effort throughout all the departments. When we go through the booklet that I have here, I'm looking at some of the expenditures that happen in the police department. And again, if in some areas we spent $5,000 last year, but we're proposing only spending $1,000, hey, we took a 4,000 cut in one area. Was it necessary that we spent that 5,000 last year? So again, we have to look, and we have to look hard where we're spending that money. And again, that's us up here. We're not really paying that much close of attention to where these actual dollars are going, whether we need to spend them or not. And Councilmember Kane pointed out, hey, we don't have it, we don't spend it. Hey, that's correct. We don't have it, we don't spend it. We don't have the money for more officers. We have to freeze some positions, and if we have to do that, we have to do that in order to survive. Cutting recreation isn't an option either. So I'd rather have some salary reductions rather than people losing their jobs. We need to make sure that we sustain everybody and make sure that we do it. And we're looking at these numbers and figuring out where the money is going. Unnecessary spending has got to stop, and we have to be really cognizant of what it's paying for, down to cell phone services. Heck, you can have my iPad, take it back. And looking under the expenses for elected officials, it was on that page. I think it was like 60 something. I'm like, I don't know where that's going, but whatever's under there. Again, if it's coming down to the computer supplies that I'm even looking at the police department, dry cleaning, come on now. Is it necessary? It's a couple thousand, but that couple thousand goes right there in that recreation fund. We're looking at saving money. We need to really hone in on some of those excessive spending habits that we've allowed somehow, and bringing that revenue. Get out there, tell people to do the census. Get out there, tell people to spend their money here in Livingston. We've got 6 gas stations. Spend your money here in Livingston. Keep ourselves here in Livingston. Everybody put in for their property taxes. Raise those rental fees that we have in rep. There's many things. Those user fees. We talked about this in a council meeting a few weeks back. And you guys were all wondering what was happening, right, Councilmember King? You all wondering why the recreation has to come to general fund. Well, because we're not raising those user fees. So take a look back at some of the behavior that we have and that we're allowing, and that we're not allowing here or there. So again, we have to take a look at what we're doing here for the survival of our town, not just department by department. It takes the effort of all of us, all the departments, for all of us to work. So if you're talking about you want to bring in more officers for the safety, again, come with some of those solutions. Where are we going to get that money?
This is Raul Garcia. Can I talk?
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, hold on. Councilwoman Bautista has the floor. Mayor Pro Tem, please hold for a moment. I'll get to you in a moment.
That was just a question that I was directing at Councilmember King. I know he's really adamant of wanting to, public safety, yes, very important in our town. He presented a case, but where are your solutions? Where are we going to get that money?
Well, then that's finance. Where is it?
You got a whole booklet in front of you.
If Chief found identity, we didn't promote Chief. So we're going to get that on the $80,000.
Very good.
The two officers that stand around here, we're going to get that one.
Okay?
All right.
Yeah.
They pretty much said that making it clear, no, I got more money now. As soon as you want somebody, proceed with the position.
So I'd like
So
to,
what happened to that money when, with, right now we have, we're not able to receive some of the money.
So the expenditures are still reflected in the police budget. We are presenting to you a budget staying with all of the listing of the positions in the police department. So those monies are in the expenditure side for police. The only thing right now is that we're proposing a freeze on those vacant positions because, in a way, it is. We are fortunate that those positions became vacant in order for us not to be able to tap into a occupied position and say, you know, we're going to have to let you go. So freezing vacant positions is one of the safest ways to save some money for the city without affecting someone's life, someone's job.
Then again, it goes back to public safety. If this town was safe, why the City Hall has bulletproof glass in front of it? If it's that safe, we should have been just a walking
Is Maria done?
Too many thick glass over there.
Okay,
Obviously, something is not safe.
Mayor Pro Tem wants to speak. Let him have a.
Let me finish my.
Go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah, if it was that safe, we didn't have to have 2 inch thick glass over there. Obviously, it's not safe that somebody wanted to have thick glass over there.
Mayor Pro Tem, go ahead, please.
Okay, yeah, there's some things that I have disagreed with Maria about police officers. Yeah, we need revenue here in Livingston. You think people, if crime goes up in Livingston, are going to want to move here, are going to want to come and shop here, are going to want to stop and put gas? No. I mean, public safety is very important for the community, and I mean, you think citizens are going to be out there walking around with their families and knowing there's been shootings lately, and we're not, addressing it quickly? I mean, we need those officers out there. And then when Councilmember Bautista said, quote, come on, end of quote, about the dry cleaning, I mean, she has to remember we approved contracts with the PD not too long ago, and that was in their contract. So on that part, I don't agree with her either. So, but like I say, I mean, public safety is number one here. I know everybody's important. However, we need officers out there. I mean, how much are we going to be spending on overtime if we don't hire new guys? Have we thought about that? How much did we spend on overtime last year if the city manager could tell us right now?
About 125,000, Mayor Pro Tem?
So with that, how many officers can you hire?
One, sir.
Okay, so that's okay. So one officer, and we paid all that overtime.
Yes, it's practically impossible.
Hold on
not
just a
to,
minute, sir. Hold on just a minute. I'm speaking, please.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, so thinking about that, I mean, don't you think that would be a savings for us? To hire another officer, put him on the street, and try to cut all this overtime? Okay, go ahead, sir.
So yes, Mayor Pro Tem, it's practically impossible to eliminate overtime completely. So you will always have overtime, either because they have to go to the courts, or there's an incident of some sort and it requires overtime. But certainly, the goal is always to look at ways to minimize overtime.
So and more. I mean, this year I expect post. I mean, they're probably going to come out with more trainings. That we're going to be spending more funds on training for officers. I mean, we thought about that. I mean, on that part, is that in the budget?
So we look at the feedback that we get from our department heads. All that is fed into our budget. And so, yes, there's always some unforeseen situations, and that's why we have mid-year budgets. So come May, we will be looking at, or earlier, we'll be looking at adjustments. So throughout the year, we look at making adjustments. And right now, we instituted a bare bones budget starting in fiscal year 2019-2020 and going into this fiscal year as well. So we're trying to be as conservative as possible and saving where we can, and only working on the essential.
And then also, I mean, like, you want to freeze positions, And like Councilmember Kang said, I mean, and we want to grow this town. And so these officers are going to be out there working more to protect the citizens out there. How's that going to work? So we're getting revenue, but we can't provide additional 2 officers for the city of Livingston.
Well, Mayor Pro Tem, I'll just share that this is a proposed budget, and this is very typical in presentations and fiscal conservancy. So ultimately, you guys are the policymakers, and you guys make the decision. So what we are proposing is just that, a proposal. And so,
okay, well, I think we need to really think about that. So,
yes, sir.
So that's all I have to say on that.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilman, any further comments? Unmute.
One of the things I also want to point out, too, is that not only is hiring more officers, but also paying all the other things that come along with another officer rather than the overtime, and that's the medical, the retirement, the insurance, unemployment, and workers' compensation. All those things come into another paycheck. So the overtime, maybe, yeah, we've been able to handle it, but as more people come into Livingston, that's something that we're going to be looking at, and it's something that we're not, for this year, what we're looking at is we're already past halfway of the year. So again, looking into the future, how this is going to impact overall, we have to take a look at what we're spending now and what we did spend to get us into this predicament of having to keep reaching into the general fund. So again, yeah, thank you for your comments, Mayor Pro Tem. But we really have to be accountable for what our officers are also doing out there. Maybe there are some ways that we can bring more revenues in, citing, ticketing, doing more patrolling. Again, there's a lot of things that come into place through the effort of all of us. Public safety, again, I'm not knocking public safety. It is necessary. It is a necessary component of any town, but so are our other programs. They are necessary as well. So again, we're looking at this from an officer's point of view, and we need to look at it holistically so that we can serve all of Livingston and protect all of Livingston. So, thank you.
Thank you. Before I make some comments, just one moment. Before I make any comment on the general fund budget, I know I see quite a few public asking for a moment to speak. I'm going to open up, I'll bring it back to the council. Maybe somebody came up with a magic idea, so come on forward, please. And please state your name and address for the record.
Angela, I'm from Livingston, I'm resident, but I'm coming as a parent. I just heard Kane who said, oh, so what happens if only one player doesn't play? It's not even about one player. You have to realize some of these parents have 3 to 4 kids. If we raise the prices, they're not going to afford it. Besides that, I've been out there. Have you seen the looks of the kids' eyes when they go play? They've been in their house or they've been in school. That's their outlet. And if you cut that, you're going to cut their outlet. I mean, we're in a state where they're all locked up anyway. And if you start cutting funds and they can't afford it, it's not one kid. They're affecting everybody. If it's one brother, one sister, the other brothers, it's just not going to be one kid not playing soccer. And you have to remember, these kids look forward to it. Besides that you want the police, I get it. I get the protection that we need. We need a safe environment. You have to remember about these kids. At the end of the day, these kids are the ones at the end of the day, they're going to be out there. But you're just not cutting one kid. You're doing a lot more. If it's one kid, at the end of the day, it's going to be more. But you do need to go maybe out there one or two days when all this ends and look at the eyes when they're playing, when they won a game, when their coach came through and gives them a goodie bag. That's what you need to look at before you start cutting budgets with the rest. So it's just not one kid. Thank you.
Well, I do have 2 kids of my own. They do also play sports. I don't think $5 one cheeseburger in a year. I don't know if that's that much money for parents to spend on their kids. So that's something that parents need to realize. What's $5 extra, $10 extra for one baseball season? $10 extra.
Please.
Well, after just over for the fee, $5, $10. I don't think that's going to make a difference, but when everybody puts $5, $10, we'll get it. Like I said, I'm going to give them $19, $20, $50 extra. I think that's the parents' responsibility. Don't play a video game. Put your kids in sports stuff. We're not really $3,000. It's going to get up. Get it in the account, $5, $6. But you know what? The kid that does that gets shot coming in the cup, he ain't coming back. That can do some matter.
Thank you, Mr. Kang. This is still open to the public.
Melissa Williams, 676 Briarwood Drive. My only question everybody has is that good reason and Councilmember King touched on it. If you can't afford to increase the city, then stop increasing the city. We can't afford not to cost that almost $800,000 in the hole. I mean, where's that money going to come from? If you get a bigger city, you're going to need more cops. And it's going to take away from a lot of other programs. What's the chunk that it takes to run a city with 50+% of the budget? If you keep increasing the force, you're going to do damage to a lot of other programs. So if you can't go to the city, right, then stop going. That's it. Thank you.
I actually want to just add on to Robert, I believe that's a valid point. Again, if we don't have enough money to provide services to these residents, we shouldn't be taking the opportunity to expand it. It's not only going to be law enforcement, police officer, but you're going to need recreation, you're going to need work. You're not going to come to new homes, and you're not going to have parks with the employees that are working for public works that we're cutting. They're going to be cutting additional parks, they're going to be checking other water meters and so forth. So it's not just police. It's going to go back to public works, it's going to go to city clerks, that's the city hall, it's going to be financed, and so forth. You know what I mean? Everything's going to expand. I'm not going to get fired. You're going to need fire as well. So, you know, all that stuff we have to look at. And the other thing I was kind of lost, Councilor Bautista, I think most of you guys probably caught on to it, but so you mentioned that we're halfway into the year. Our fiscal year actually starts at the start of this month, so I understand year-wise, so this is our new budget that we're looking at, so December and so forth on. One thing that I was looking at numbers, I don't know if I'm maybe doing the math wrong, but you mentioned that 2 police officers cost $250,000. So we divide 250,000 divided by 2 actually equals 125. But we times that by 3 because there's 3 specific codes, that should be 375, not 318. On top of that, if we add $150,000 to position of growth or saved on by promoting, you have to add that number is 318,000 should be much higher. It's actually, if I do the math in front of you guys, 275 plus 180. If you look at law enforcement alone, you're looking at 555,000 that you guys are actually taking away from it. And then when you look at furloughs, as city manager actually mentioned, I'm sorry, it's very hard to talk and kind of talk. If we look at police department, we're looking at furloughs or pay cuts. The only reason the police department is taking pay cuts that we're not getting explained to it because we're already at minimum staffing. So if we tell an employee to take a day off, we have to call an additional employee to cover it so we can meet the requirements of 2 officers for every 1,000. And that extra employee will be on overtime. So that's why they still require the police department to come to work but still take a pay cut. But everybody else can actually stay at home and still get paid the same amount. We have to look at that. If we want to be fair to everybody, we have to make sure that it's all around. They're not just certain groups.
Good evening again. This is Jose Moran, PO 847, Livingston, California. I think all of the comments are very valid. We don't want to make any cuts. We don't want to freeze anything. We don't want to cut any sports. We don't want to reduce safety. Definitely safety is very important, I believe, for all of us. It is very important to me personally. Because with safety, I mean, obviously that we reduce gangs and just bad behavior. But at the same time, if we don't have activities for those kids, then those kids are going to be out on the street. But I think I already said that. But the question that I have is, if anybody has the book here, on page 61, it's something that I wanted to ask. I don't know who might be able to answer. But on page 61, we're looking at the general fund and relates to police public safety. For the budget of 2019-2020, if I'm reading this correctly, for personal services, budget 19 and 20, we're looking at $2,965,668. 61. Okay. So, but I'm looking at this. I think on 61, just to break it down a little bit more, just for personal services, it's $2,965,000 for budget 1920. So for the budget 2021, we're asking for a budget just for personal services for $3,415,000. Yeah, I'm sorry, personnel. So roughly, that's roughly about $500,000 difference from one year to the other. Without having the actual file and keeping in here, kind of standing on what happened, and then also for general information. I think from last, well, I don't know, but how did that happen? And since when did we call? $500,000 is a lot of money. That's, we're looking at 318 for the 3 current positions for police that are vacant. So, and then once again, I'm all for safety. And then the other thing we're looking at, so this budget is from June to next year, 12 months, June 2021. So we're not going to build 400 new homes in 1 year. So I don't know, I'm thinking it's going to be 2 or 3 years by the time all of those projects are done. But yes, definitely, I do believe that eventually we do need more police officers. Once again, I'm all in favor for safety, because without safety, then I do have kids, and I think we all care what happens in our communities. So just a question that I have in regards to the budget, the difference of a little bit over, well, it's almost like $500,000. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in the public?
So what you're looking, the column that Mr. Moran is referring to is our column for 2019-2020 adopted budget. This is the budget that the council adopted on June 2019. After June 2019, there was a labor agreement negotiation that it was approved. This was approved in August 2019, and that is what justifies the $500,000 increase in salary. We had one-time expenditures and adjustments of the salary for our in the labor group for the police department that also went into a retroactive adjustment. So that's what caused the jump in the salaries for our for the general fund in the public safety side.
Anybody else from the public?
One of the questions was that $100,000 increase previous fiscal year to this fiscal year. What is that in terms of percentage of the PD budget and also the overall city budget? That's number one. Number two, it's kind of like my impression is seeing the interaction between council and the public and interaction with departments. Like, I'd like to see a little bit more. Now, I hear from a lot of council members, but I'd like to see a little more civility, decorum, and respect. Just kind of hear from the audience, like, we're so the high standards, run the city council, and be a little more professional and exhibit a little more respect. And then number three, we're talking a lot about TV and how it's understaffed, things of that sort, and that's fine. That's part of the case. And I know a lot of folks are relying on a resolution from 2005. Now, again, just because it says something on paper in 2005, all 15 years, it could be the case that maybe we need more PD based on the population of the city and where the city's going. It could be the case that we need less PD based on that resolution from 2005. It's not simply that black and white. Like Councilmember Baptista Soto said, looking at it holistically, but and comprehensive, but it's not just black and white. You have to take into account if you do increase personnel, there's an increase in benefits, medical benefits, pensions, liabilities, those kinds of things. PD in comparison to another personnel is costlier than the regular staff, which is understandable, of course, for what the responsibilities and things that they do in performing in the city. Because for me, when I think about it, yes, maybe PD needs another police officer, whatnot, maybe we need another one public works, but is it based on performance? Is it just based because we have this number that we need 35 and we're at 32? Like, what kind of analysis? Is it just, oh, we're down 3, we need 3 more people? Like, it's tied to like some sort of analysis and research. It's not just black and white. Like I said, in 2005, maybe a little bit more analysis. I mean, it could be. Maybe we need more police officers, maybe we need less. At the same time, the city is growing. We're not going to get 480 units in the next year. I'm not sure. What's going on if we get the plans get expedited? If the Swanson House gets resolved, I mean, I don't know. It's not going to happen next year. So it could be in a couple of years, or we hire more personnel in police, rec, public works. The way I look at it too, the city is developing and growing, right? We have a contract planner 2 days a week. I call them on Monday, I don't get an answer till Wednesday. I mean, no disrespect, I get it. They're only there 2 days a week, but I also think that's a position that's also important and valuable. You have a city that's growing. You have economic development that occurs through planning, through building, through growing. Now, if you have a developer that has a great plan and good idea, and they're calling on Monday, but they don't hear something on Thursday because they didn't move fast because they're getting financing from the bank, et cetera, blah, 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 from credit from the state, whatnot. I mean, if we had someone 5 days a week in planning, that'd be helpful to help our cities grow and be safe in a smart, strategic manner. So I'm saying it's not just PD, it's public works. We have 2 people that aren't there fixing the streets. We have older parts of the community that are getting dilapidated, worse streets. They're not getting fixed. That's also important. Newer parts of town, of course, they get better streets, new streets, those kinds of things. Of course, because you come in, film it. So those are just something to think about. And that's all. Thank you for your time. Again, I also just want to show thank you to staff, to the audience that's here, for council, for giving us the opportunity to express our concerns, comments, if not comment all the time. So I appreciate this workshop. So thank you again for your time.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and close to the public for now. Ms. Patel, do you wish to make remarks, anybody, comments, public made? Do you wish to respond to any comments made by the public? I don't think you had any, but I wanted to.
No, you did have a question. I noted it. Um, I believe what we're seeing personnel, the salaries for overall the city, we updated it with any inflators for cost of living adjustments, which in this case it went into effect on July 1st, 2020, and that was the 2% cost of living adjustment, and that was across the board. That was what it was negotiated through the labor agreement. And then the other normal inflators that come into play in our personnel services are pensions, and that continues to go up. Our pension expense, I believe it went up about 5 to 7%. And our workers' compensation, unfortunately, we were also notified that it's based on, we're part of a joint agreement of many different cities, and it was spread across all the cities. We had about a 13% increase in workers' compensation. That is, it becomes very expensive. I mean, for the larger cities, then there may be some cushion to absorb it, but for other cities, definitely any swings over 3%, 5%, they just become very expensive to absorb.
Thank you. Now my turn. Everybody have their say. For me, Mr. Chair, have we calculated in your budget any increases because of the COVID? Because employers are responsible for COVID protection for their employees. Have we calculated the future costs on that yet?
We have reduced a lot of due to COVID. I mean, this budget, as we are presenting it to you, we have actually reduced costs in the terms of in the maintenance side. We knew, or we projected that based on this pandemic, a lot of the trainings and a lot of the travel that would normally take place in and around the city and for city employees will not be taking place. So those were items that we removed.
That's not what I was referring to. Okay. Because of COVID, insurance companies are impacted. Now, workers' comp costs can be impacted. I know we haven't gone that far yet, but what have you calculated, taking that into consideration, for future possible increases in those categories?
We have not looked into that as of yet. In the 5-year fiscal plan, I did increase a little. I did increase on our pension and our insurance. And I just go back.
Want to take a break?
I'm sorry, but it was increased in our 5-year fiscal plan. So that way we can do somewhat of a projection that healthcare benefits are definitely going to cost more in the near future. And if we were to continue to look at the expenditure trend the way that we're looking at within the pandemic terms, we would see this growing.
Okay, thank you. And for me, I have seen the memo, or not memo, but the resolution 2005 regarding the 1.5. That is a city's ideal target if we can afford it. If we can't afford what we have now, how are we going to afford additional officers and any other personnel in any department? We can't. I hate to say I told you guys so, but we were negotiating this. I told everybody, warned everybody, be careful of what we propose or what we negotiate, because it's going to bite us in the ass. And everybody, this is now biting us in the ass. This increase in our personal costs, if we did, we're not generous. I know it's earned by the employees. Don't get me wrong. It is earned. But I told them, you can't clear the check. This is what we're going to do. Now, based on economic forecast, this is to Wall Street and everybody, this COVID thing can go 2-3 years. We don't know. We have no idea. Everybody's talking about miracle vaccine. We don't know. We're getting ready to hit a second wave in fall on regular flu season and perhaps a very high uptick in COVID. If that happens, we're right now at 15% or 18% infection rate, and the state is on we're on the state's watch list. It goes even higher. Imagine if Sacramento issues shelter in place again. These revenues we're projecting does not take those into account. Our biggest source of revenue outside of property tax is sales tax. And a lot of it for us, the major portion is the gas tax. If people get sheltered in place, we're going to take a big hit, and those numbers, we're going to wish for those numbers. Now, as far as, I know we don't have the historical general reserves, but we've been down this road before. It is not an easy one to call maximum. It is not, folks. I have Chief Soria, and of all the years that I've been on the council, he will point to anybody, nobody can deny my strong, very strong support for public safety. I've been a #1 advocate for public safety. When I was there, I pushed for body cams, I pushed for whatever they need, and any person we can afford. When we thought that it would be to city's benefit, we even added another sergeant position because supervisor is important. We added that. However, I cannot personally see us go down this path. Now, if we, the council, want to add more officers, but lay off in recreation or lay off in other departments, public safety is important, but so is water flowing out of your faucet. So if you flush that toilet, that water better get somewhere and get treated. That's also important. Recreation. I have always supported it, and I never, over the years, tried to increase. And maybe we have a time for user fee adjustments. I always felt that we need to have kids throwing balls, not rocks. Because one kid that we don't manage in recreation, we're going to manage it with those guys in the blue. That's the decisions we have to make. Adding officers is very important. I point to any city where they're facing these kind of deficits, they're saying we're going to add more personnel. Nobody's doing it. I don't know what other cities have as far as the ratio to public. I would like to get that because I know we're not going to make any decision tonight. But I'm also willing to bet that the Merced County doesn't also adhere to that 1.51 percentage. I'll have to know what their percentage is. Now, Mr. Aguilar did present a good idea in saying we need to look at our impact fees and all that. However, any project that we have pending cannot be charged. Yes, there will be some small amount of money, but that's going to be 1 to 2 years away depending on those projects come to fruition before we see any revenues. We also do need to look at our overall fees because I believe it's been a long time since we adjusted our planning fees. We do need to look at those. I think it's been at least a decade and a half, maybe longer. Costs have gone up. We are supplementing some of that cost there. Those something we need to look. But none of those steps we take are going to be able to help us much in this year's budget. Everybody out there, families have to make decisions, everybody. a husband or wife or somebody gets laid off, well, do we really need that subscription to Netflix or whatever they do? They start cutting costs. They don't say, you know what, in a few years we can get more money, let's just go ahead and spend. Credit card spending is the worst thing you can do. It is the worst thing we can do. This 2.4 looks like a lot of money. It's not, folks. It is not. It's not. It is. You're smart at math. What is the overall percentage, the general fund reserve? That's the overall budget for the city. What is that percentage?
What I can tell you, Mayor, is that that's a little less than 3 months reserve.
But I wanted to know.
The reserves are about 41% of the annual expenditures in our general fund. And I analyzed this. It means that it roughly covers 5 months of operation for the city.
Okay.
$2.4 million.
And being on 3 to 5 months, depending on how our costs are, that's not a very safety cushion. What does the company with the number again? What do they recommend reserves to be?
Best practice to keep your reserves at 50% or above.
So 6 months reserve, and we have about 3 months. So we're less than half of the recommendations, correct? So by doing that, we're going to be going the opposite direction further.
Correct.
So say that we take no action to increase, and everybody talks about our general plan, which is going to take, 3 to 5 years before we come to before and for adoption? And after that, how long before projects come forward to where things get built? Yeah, a long time. It's going to take at least 10 years. It's going to take that long for this money to come in. So, and that also goes to my other point of how much of an increase we're going to get in population between now and then. We're going to have a certain percentage. I don't know what the number is, but we don't know. One thing we may have to do, is I don't think we can add any personnel. It's my view. I may be the lone wolf in this, but we can't afford it right now. There's no way. Now, it is also, and I've gone through this before, it is totally unfair to some departments where they can have to take literally a pay cut and be here. I get that. You have to take a pay cut that you're working, and others have to take a pay cut in a different sense where they're not here, so they can go out and do whatever they want to do. Sit home watching novellas or whatever. Whatever it is, they can do that. So that's it. I also see that it is a difficult decision. Now, we, as much as I love our PD and everybody else, we have to make a decision that's fair to all of our employees and also the citizens. We do. I would strongly recommend that we freeze positions, and I would like to give the bargaining groups in saying, do you guys have any options on what we can do? Last time, what they did was, in order to do that, police departments and others gave up some of their insurance where they contribute a little more. There were some options that were done to bring a little money in. Not necessarily bring a little money in, but to cut down the expenditures. Now, we have recreation, everybody. I cannot think of any department that we don't get praises for. When I walk out in the park, people say, hey, it's beautiful green park, everything's nice and clean. Kudos to public works at every level. And when they say that, you know what, I can walk at night, I feel safe. that is also kudos to the police department. And when you see a whole bunch of kids out there playing basketball, football, whatever they're doing, I don't see them playing in the street. They're playing in a safe environment. But we have to do that. So what I'd like to is, were you going to say something?
No, yeah.
Go ahead. No, hold on. I didn't speak. You guys are speaking. So this is where we're at. Recreation, I will act, and I know that it's painful for some employees to consider this, but we really look at some user fees. Maybe there's a way to put some increases at a higher percentage to kids outside the city limits to offset some of the expenses to our locals. We may have to do some adjustments, but this is something we've got to play with. As far as general fund, unless somebody's got a check they want to sign to donate to the city, I don't see how we're going to get out of this. I don't see it. So, in my choice is look at least a 5% furlough salary reduction for non-police department. And then also look at some sort of a plan through salaries and others to come up with an equal number from the police department. Now, another thing we have, I don't know, Vanessa, did you take into calculation that our newly appointed chief today, this contract ends in June. That means between now and June, we're going to have to go through a recruiting process for the chief, and I believe that's about what, $40,000 if you have the terms. Maybe a little higher, a little lower. So that kind of adds that 483 or 318 in the police department can go up to about 350. For low end on the expense side, but it can go there. So, so this is what we have to decide. What we're going to do now, I'm going to let council comment anything further on the general fund, and then we're going to go ahead and continue with our enterprise fund. Okay? What I would like, whatever questions you have on options, I'd like to ask the city manager to get with the bargaining group, to get with employees, and have them come to give us a little feedback at this time. Okay? And please give me what other cities are as far as the officer level. Okay, I said my piece for now. Council, any comments to that?
Yes.
I have some. Can you guys hear me?
Okay. Going back to the SRO. The money in $95 that went into high school and I don't know what middle school thing is about the same. Where is that money going? Are you putting that money back into the general fund, or is that going back to the police department? Because we're paying those two officers from the police department fund, or are you putting the money back in the general fund?
That money is in the general fund that pays for
So
the
that's
$200.
$100 to go back to the police department. Because we got two officers that are paying off of our budget, we're returning the money to the school saying that we're putting it in the bank account. And our second question is, the general plan that you're going to be talking about, how much is that asking us to do? How much is that going to for? I understand it's a 2-year process, 3-year process. How much money does that cost?
Hold on.
Go ahead.
And we'll know where it's coming from, too.
Revenue for the general fund is shown in one big pot for general fund. So we reflect this revenue within the general fund, but the police department is also in the general fund umbrella.
How much are we paying the consultants to do everything?
You mean now for
Yes.
the general fund?
Yes.
that was an agreement that it was approved sometime this year, I believe in March, and it was about 200.
No, 653,000 over the course of
Is there any way,
two fiscal years.
is there any way we will put that on hold? Or to put it back in another 2 years?
We already have the agreement signed. They will be a forfeiture of an agreement, but the general fund is not paying for any of that work. It is all coming out of impact fees. We have impact fees that were collected specifically for the general plan update.
So, just for clarification for folks, the general plan is paid by impact fees and future costs to folks that come in, correct?
That is correct.
Has nothing to do with what the budget we're talking about, correct?
No.
It does not. So, suspending the general plan, what impact do they have on our general fund?
It has none, because we're not using any general fund money to pay for the general plan
It doesn't have
update.
any impact.
So the SRO, that we subtract those two contracts that we're getting from that, we should be able to get $50,000, $60,000 or $100,000.
No, that's not true.
You're putting those to different costs.
It's the general fund.
Yeah,
Revenue.
so my question, let's say if those grants expire right now, we're still looking at the same number, $118,000. So we're paying out of that fund. So the second guy, how much to go back to the police department? We should bring in these two new SROs with that extra money we need from high school and the middle school.
The thing is that the police department is in the general fund.
So you don't have a grant, we're paying the SROs.
Since we don't have any schools, we're all the SROs right now.
Are you all moving? Nope. They're parked on the same street.
I'm sorry, Chris, Chief, I didn't hear you.
What was the question again?
Okay, that's a rose. We're getting those grant. The grant doesn't expire. Does that mean that the number goes up to $200,000 or does that stay the same?
If expenditures are included, because the SROs are an officer within the police department, the revenue will just go away, and we would have to.
So we find that number of $118,000.
That's correct.
So why don't we bring those all back and hire more for $400,000 or whatever we need, those officers? No matter what we're hiring, like all of the economy, $100,000, $200,000 employees, a week, 25, whatever we decide.
Well,
When we're split on the street, and the schools will be taking care of part-time employees.
we actually did that, and I think it was probably about 5, 6 years ago, where we actually did use a reserve officer in high school. They opted to actually pay for the full time, including benefits and everything. Then the math grant was supposed to cover the full officer's benefits and everything to stay in middle school. And that's what that grant covers, but I don't think that grant covers everything, my understanding, correct? But also, getting into other stuff, the school now wants to go back. That's something else where they don't want to be paying full. But that's another negotiation thing that depending on what's going on tonight, whether or not which direction we go, what they're going to do.
So that the school is paying for a full officer, why don't we just have a separate account for the school resource officer? Why are we linking them with Livingston PD and technically we lost two officers in that case, because somebody else is paying for them? Or on the budget, you have actually that we're paying for it. It doesn't say anywhere that we have two officers getting paid by grant. So you're requiring officers from our general fund or our police budget, or you're getting $190,000, $30,000 general fund. Shouldn't that also go to the police department for the police officers? And then we could actually have $7,000 where we're supposed to have on the street?
One thing that the chief can validate here, Councilmember Kank, is that the during the summer months, okay, the city does pick up some of that cost, and because the school district does not pick up the full year cost.
Then why don't those officers come back on the street? They will pay for them. Well, anyway, through our city fund anyway, that the money that we're getting from the grant is going to the general fund.
The school resource officer at the high school is back, but he is getting ready to go back to the high school.
Yes, so my question is, the high school paying the officers directly, or are we paying them from our city account? So where's that?
They're being billed, but I don't know.
How come that money is not show up anywhere?
It's not 100.
Yeah,
It's 95,000.
And another 95,
Yes,
180,000. Where's that money at?
Well, everything is in the general fund.
Yeah, but you should have linked that with the police department. That way, that 180,000 would have been 120,000.
It's accounted in the general fund for police department use. I mean, we don't use it in the general fund.
Yeah, that's my question. If they say we're going to police officers,
That is correct. If we don't have those $95,000, that officer
So
will
what
still
is
be
this-
part of the general fund.
and you know, the school hiring officer.
However,
But you have to pay for that something that the school will hire a security guard.
Council member, please speak into your phone.
We're paying it, the money's not coming in anyways.
However, since those, they are, if you absorb those officers, it's going to impact, obviously, the general fund more. And I believe it's, I mean, you can correct if I'm wrong, between the two, I think it's being picked up around, what, 80, 90% of their salaries that are being picked up. I mean, I don't know the exact. So there is a small fee to the city, yeah. But between the two schools, actually the county, not the middle school, the county and the high school, they're actually picking up a majority of those funds.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Kane? Okay, so what we have now is, Vanessa, you have Councilman Kane's a question. So what we're going to do in order to move forward with our other budget, please get these answers. And we're going to have, we're not going to be done here. We need him to just respond to the numbers, okay? So what we're going to do now, at this point, council, if you have any other discussion with general fund, we're going to go ahead and move to the enterprise fund at this time. Thank you.
Oh, no, that's,
So let's go ahead. Thank you very much.
I have model for council and our audience, another 5-year fiscal for the Water Enterprise Fund. We can look here at our fiscal year 1920. It's, I'm using that fiscal year as our base. The budget that we're proposing for 2020, 2021 is a budget that will have flat revenue since we are in the middle of a rate study, and conservatively we are continuing to project our revenues at the same rate, meaning that our rate study as of today doesn't have or hasn't been approved, so we are not accounting for any increases in revenue. We have removed any kind of one-time expenditures, and we have also looked into any non-necessary expenses in our maintenance, operations. It's quite a lean budget for our water enterprise as well. So you can see here today that in the 2021 budget, our revenues are higher than our expenditures for the water fund. And they will continue to be, expenditures will continue to be lower or equal all the way to year 2022, 23, and eventually if there is no rate increase or we don't, meaning that our rates remain flat, at some point our expenditures do outpace our revenues. However, our rate study projects a series of Our rate study projects a series of capital improvements. Some of those listed here, well 8, well 9, are counting that it's going to be using reserves to fund those projects. We will be getting some loans for the well 8 and 9 conveyance treatment plan, well 14, 16. We're projecting that we will be acquiring loans for those projects, but for the most part, most of our capital improvement projects in the water enterprise fund, it's coming from reserve, meaning that if we are not putting any money in our reserve here, we will eventually, and this is one of the charts that our consultants provided for us when we were doing the rate study workshop. This line here means we continue to have our rates at the same pace as we have today. At some point, one, we wouldn't be able to do all of the improvements that we are putting on the schedule to do, and then two, at some point, those loans that we are asking to acquire, they do come with some type of contingency, and we have to meet those contingencies, meaning that we have to meet that revenue and those reserves in order for us to be in good standing with the loan agency. So you can see here that if we were to continue to keep the rates the same, keep them flat, at some point, all of the expenditures that we were projecting to have as far as improvements, we won't be able to engage or do any of those items. So that is the outlook for the water enterprise. Would you like? I'll continue with the wastewater. In the wastewater, I've done the same modeling 5 years out. We have 1920 budget. Our 2020-2021 budget, it shows a very small revenue higher than our expenditures. And in 2021-22, our revenues will not be able to sustain the expenditure growth for the wastewater budget. And we will see that it continues to grow. It will be at a $400,000 gap by year 24-25. This is one of the graphs that our rate study consultant provided during the workshop. And at the same time, this flat line right here is the looking at keeping the rates the way they are today. And we can see this growing trend in which at some point we don't meet our expenditures or our contingencies, and we just continue to have a wider gap in between our revenues, our fees collected, and our expenses. We have our sanitation fund. We have our 1920 as our base. Fiscal year 2021, we have a one-time expense that we had included in here. It was part of the a street sweeper. And once we remove this in 2021-22, we will see our revenues up and don't keep up with our expenses. And we continue to see the trend that our expenditures become higher every year. In the sanitation, this is another chart that our rate study consultants presented in the workshops, and we can see the same trend. This black line here is keeping rates as they are today, and we will see that continually through the years, our expenditures continue to outpace the fees that we are collecting, and we have a bigger gap to close through the year. We have also presented, or we have also passed some options on how to balance our enterprise fund. We know we have the user fees. We have the 5-year rate study. In this case, it's August. We feel that if we are able to apply the recommended rate by January 2021, we will be able to catch up in some way. However, that may not be enough in order for us to collect the funds that we need to, because now we would be at a 6-month gap. So definitely that will look into us having to start this rate study. Instead of another 5 years, we would have to start it early. We're looking into starting this study in 2023, so it can compile all of the impacts of what it has done with not collecting this fund earlier as presented. We are also proposing to freeze any of the vacant positions that are, I have shown, we have vacant positions, $483,000, 318 police, 19,000 recreation. Those are positions that do not impact the enterprise fund, but we do have $145,000 of vacant positions in our public works department, and those are some of those positions are funded through the enterprise fund. So we propose that we freeze those vacancies at this point. And also looking into the furloughs, the same as the general fund. I have listed savings of approximately $1.5 million to $790,000. Is if we're looking at it either 1 day a week or a 20% salary savings, or 1 day every other week, and what I mentioned in the general fund, 1 day per month, which equates to about 5% savings. That's what I have for the enterprise fund.
Council, before I go for the council, this is the enterprise fund, water, sewer, and garbage. Does anybody wish to comment on this item?
So, City Manager, I would like to make a couple comments here. So, one of the more important things that I want you guys to focus on the slide there is we were recommending that we implement the rates starting January 1st of 2021. So because we adopt by ordinance and by resolution, we have to start at least 3 months ahead of time, and in order to have the rates start January 1st of 2021. I know that there was a question that was asked by Mayor at the last workshop in terms of how much we've actually expended to date on the rate consultant. We've spent $47,000. So if we were to make this lapse or continue to move things further and further down the road to get the consultant to come up with the new analysis and stuff would actually require a few more $1,000s to do that. So for right now, that's why we're recommending that in the coming month or so that we really start looking at implementing the new rates starting January 1st of 2021.
Thank you, Mr. Ramirez. This item is open to the public. Anybody wish to make a comment? Anybody at home calling in wish to comment on enterprise funds? Seeing everybody being silent, I'll go to Mr. Aguilar.
I don't have any questions regarding this item. I know that the utility rate increases are very important, and we discussed it many times, and there was a utility stakeholder committee made, and we did obviously spend money with those rate studies. So I do understand the importance of that, and we should have a discussion about that moving forward.
Mr. Chen? Councilman Batista, enterprise fund?
I do believe that we do need to move forward with the utility rates. I just have a few questions, just flipping through, just for clarity. So on page 101 in our booklet, we have some projects. The requested budget is $512,996. What projects are we spending that on? In our booklet, in the one that's found, page 101. There's some projects listed?
Yes.
What type of projects would those be?
For our
For fund budget of $512,000.
we have those monies set aside at the discretion of the council to approve any kind of this is our impact fee to decide on any project for the city. So this impact fee is our Streets and Bridges Development Impact Fee. We set aside the funds whenever there is a project that meets the qualifications. We bring it to council for approval. However, because it is development impact fee, there is some criteria that it has to be met, that it has to benefit new development. So we set aside the funds, but we bring it to council whenever there is a qualifying project.
And those funds could only be used for that specifically, correct?
Then on page 106, there's $1 million to transfer out. Is that transfer to the well number 8? Because there's a transfer out and then a transfer in.
That is correct. This is a transfer out, so any monies that are moving within the fund. So this is $1 million moving out of the water enterprise fund. We moved it into the water capital, so you will follow the money. The very next page, 107, under transfer in, you will see at the $1 million
Thank you.
in Fund 2104. we have also in the expenditure side a matching expense for new well 8 of $1 million.
Thank you. Then on page 108, there's $2,688,777. What wells are we working on there?
It is a combination, and I believe, let's see if I have any listings. I believe it is. We have new well 11, new well 9. I'm looking at our project list on page 152. One of them is $1 million, and the other one is $1.2 million. So we also have, I believe there was some meters, some backflows, but there were some other equipment items that were going to be purchased out of this to make up the project.
And that's coming from our water rate? Okay.
Water.
On page 112, there's a debt service.
Yeah.
Okay. How long before those are actually paid off?
They're recent. They're 2016. Normally they are 30 years, so it's going to be 4 years, 36 more years.
Oh, 30.
Yeah.
3 years.
No.
Okay. 30 years. Okay. On page 114. It's almost $3 million. Is that from a grant?
The $3 million is the sewer line replacement, yeah.
That is a grant?
CDBG money.
It's under the Community Development Block Grant.
That is for
It's grant funding.
Is it? 115. So there are many projects that were being run through here. Is there a reason why many of those were ran through the TPC settlement fund and not through the water capital account?
The way it works is that we're specifically looking at treatment. So any of the wells actually all of our wells now with the new exceedance level our LCM limits are over. So all of our wells at one point in time, as we get funding and put the projects together, as we look at our technical memo, we are going to have to
In all the wells.
in all the wells. And we have a 3-year window to do that. Otherwise, we would get penalized. So that's why we're on the schedule.
And our Dilton contract, that's paid for all the
That's for
sanitation, and that's just our pickup of trash and for their contract. A lot of money.
Yeah, there's a CPI associated with their contract, so it did go up.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem, any questions on the enterprise funds? Mayor Pro Tem? Either he dropped off or we don't know. So we'll just move forward. For me, and thank you, everybody. As we all know, enterprise funds are pretty restrictive. There's very little we can do outside of raising rates or cutting expenses. Simple. Now, one question I have is, somebody, Mr. Ramirez, tell me about our street sweeper. What's going on? And you know what the question I'm going to ask, so go ahead.
Yes. So, as a matter of fact, as it relates to the street sweeper, we're not including that in this proposed budget. But I talked a little bit about this at the last council meeting. There's actually some CMAQ funding, and that's going to pay for the street sweeper, except that we haven't been able to do anything as it relates to the street sweeper because it requires some Buy America components to it. And so we certainly, and then the current sweeper that we have is giving us several problems. So the only way to address this before this actually, breaks down would be to go with a different model that is a diesel that still meets the requirements, but we wouldn't be able to use any of the CMAQ funding, and therefore we would have to then go after, spread that money around and in our enterprise funds, and that it becomes a challenge. And so at this moment in time, what we're hoping to do is just continue to band-aid this thing, and hopefully we get a Buy America waiver and move forward. And certainly our elected officials can help there because we can put pressure on other elected officials, our congressmen, et cetera, so that we can get that waiver. And it's not easy, but that's about the only thing that we can do at this point in time.
Thank you. So it is definitely off for this fiscal year, correct?
Yes.
And I'm sure that made a lot of people in public was cry. So but anyway, as far as everything else, we know what we got to do. There's not a whole lot. So I think that's the end of our workshop for the day. Now, Council, I know that we're pretty much in agreement on enterprise and restricted funds. We're pretty much in agreement, I think. So we still have a whole bunch of questions on general fund portion of the budget. We gave some good questions to staff, and I've already stated my position on what we need to do, and we, the council alone, can't resolve everything. We need a buy-in from the people that make things happen. The police department, public works, talk to them. I'd like to give Jose, maybe, I don't know, I'd like to have one more workshop just for the general fund portion of it before we go to the final meeting for the adoption. That way we can hash things out a little bit, figure out what we're going to do. So I'd like to ask if the council is interested. First of all, let me ask Mr. Ramirez, how long would you think it would take, and going to assign finance and everybody else, for you guys to get with our groups to see if they have any alternative ideas that we haven't thought about?
Yeah, a couple of weeks.
So,
that's going to,
yeah, so, because my comments may be a bit harsh, but those are the realities. However, just to, just say we're looking at numbers on the book, but those numbers on the other end of it are lives of our folks. They feed their families on, they do a lot of things with that. So we do need to have a buy-in. I don't think as much as I would like to get, that we can afford to add employees. So the idea is going to be, how do we maintain what we have and the best we can do for our folks? I think that's what we're going to end up having to do. But between now and then, maybe a couple of weeks, we can have a budget, not during the city council meeting, because we want to make sure we give ample time. This is a very, very important item to deal with. So I like to have staff get together and then send us some possible dates, see what they come up with. They give it back to the council for another workshop, and then perhaps after that we can schedule it if we come up with some sort of solution on a budget for adoption. I don't want to adopt I want to adopt the entire budget at one time, not any portions of it. I know we can do that, but I don't think we need to do that, just in case something impacts something else. So now, that's just my opinion. What do you say, Mr. Aguilar? Give staff some time to work with employees, or what is your thought process on that, sir?
I think another workshop's needed, but with enough time for staff to reach out, make sure it's communicated out to the community, because I think it's very important to hear from everybody and have as much participation from the public as well. But yes, definitely another workshop and have further discussion, some answers to some of the questions here.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Kane? Councilman Batista?
I agree with any type of educational workshop that we conducted tonight. Everybody's had a chance to hear everybody's point of view on how they feel in regards to their departments and give feedback and ask questions. So now would be a good time for all of us to go back and reflect on all the information that was shared tonight, so that we can come together and put all our thought processes, all our ideas, be as innovative as we can, creative with the ways that we want to bring some revenues into the city and to save the programs that we can save, well, the ones that we're discussing here, and keeping everybody employed. Again, I hear from everybody that we all have an important role to play in our city. But again, it's the survival of our city. We have to realize that the decision that we're going to make is going to impact us further, and that could go very wrongly, and we don't want that to happen. So again, everybody gets a chance to go back, reflect, see what each can bring to the table or take away, so that their departments can still thrive with less. And that's difficult to do, difficult to ask, but we don't have a choice. So again, I am in agreement to have everybody go back, work out these numbers, talk to each person, each department, go back and see how each one could contribute to saving and balancing our budget. So yes.
Okay, staff, you have your a lot of work ahead of you. Please schedule and give council, after you have done what you need to do, give council some dates for another workshop.
Hey, Mayor, it's Raul Garcia.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem. Go ahead.
Do you want me to give my opinion, or?
I called on you before, but we thought you lost you.
No, I agree with you. Get another workshop going. So that's my input. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem, just so you know, I did call on you, and I didn't get I thought we lost you, so thank you for calling back, and so we will have another workshop. Staff, get back with council for possible dates.
Tentative date for right now, and we'll see what it would be another Tuesday, which would be the 25th of August. That'll give us a 2 week window.
Yeah. And council, I'm asking that we do not put this before our budget, our regular council meeting, because we want to give ample time for discussion. Okay? Any further business, council? If not, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Sorry.